Dart School presents decimal fractions, common fractions, and percentages. In maths, there are three ways to represent the same number: as a fraction, as a decimal, or as a percentage. In this video, we're going to learn how to convert from one form to the other. To change a fraction to a decimal, you just divide the numerator with the denominator. Divide numerator with denominator. Let me give you a couple of examples. Let's say you have the fraction 3 over 5 or 3/5. All you need to do is divide the number 3 with the number 5. So pretty much do this, 3 divided by 5. Now 5 cannot divide 3, therefore you change the 3 to a decimal, write it as 3.0, and then 5 can divide 30, you put the decimal point right above where it is on the dividend, and then 5 times 6 is 30, and there's no remainder. Therefore, 3/5 as a fraction is equivalent to the decimal number 0.6. Let's try and convert 3/8. Divide 3 with 8. So pretty much do this, 3 divided by 8. Same thing, 8 cannot divide 3. Write that down as a 30. Put the decimal point. You could put a 0 before it if you want to. Same on this one. And then 8 times 3 is 24. So we have a 3 here. 2, 4. Subtract. Get down the 6. And then 8 cannot divide 6. So you can bring down another 0 because this number 3 is actually equal to or equivalent to 3.00. You can add as many zeros as you want in the end. It doesn't change the number. It's still the integer 3. So if you bring this 0 down, this becomes a 60. 8 times 7 is 56. Write down a 56. 60 minus 56 is a 4. We still don't have a 0 as the remainder. Bring down another 0. So this becomes 40. Now 8 times 5 is 40. There you go. And now the remainder is 0. So no need to bring down any more zeros. We have our answer. The fraction 3/8 is equivalent to the decimal 0.375. And then how do you convert a decimal to a fraction? For example, given this decimal number 0.375, can we get back this fraction? Let's try that out. So we have 0.375. Our first job is to rewrite that as that same decimal over 1. And we can do that, right? Because a number is that same number over 1 or divided by 1. And then once you rewrite the decimal as a fraction with a 1 on the denominator, the next step is to rewrite an equivalent form of this fraction, of this whole fraction, so that the numerator becomes an integer. We still have a decimal over here, 0.375. Now what can we do to change this to an integer? Obviously, because the decimal point is 3 digits away from the end, you want to multiply this with 1000 to get an integer at the top. Now if you do that, you got to do the same with the denominator. Multiply with 1000. And therefore the new form we get of this fraction is 375 over 1000. And time for us to simplify. Divide with 25. Divide with 25. So you have 15 on the top and 40 on the bottom. Divide with 5. Divide with 5. and you get 3 on the top, 8 on the bottom. So this decimal out here is equivalent to this fraction out here. Okay. So you know how to change between a fraction and a decimal. Fraction to a decimal, divide. Decimal to a fraction, rewrite as over 1. Change the numerator to an integer by multiplying the numerator and the denominator with the same number, and then simplify. Let's talk about percentages now. To change a decimal to a percentage in its equivalent form, you want to multiply the decimal number with 100. Or in other words, just move the decimal point 2 places over to the right. That's the same as multiplying a number with 100. And if you want to change a certain percentage to a decimal, that is, go the other way, just do the opposite. Divide with 100. Divide the percentage that you have with 100. In other words, move the decimal point 2 places over to the left from the given percentage. It's as easy as that. Let's have a look at a couple of examples. Let's say you have the decimal number 0.71. You want to change it to an equivalent percentage. All you want to do is multiply this with 100, which means move the decimal point 2 places over to the right. Therefore, this becomes 71%. And how do you change, let's say, 0.8365 to a certain percentage? Just do the same. Multiply with 100, move the decimal point 2 places over to the right. So this becomes 83.65%. As easy as that. And how about changing 0.4 to a certain percent? You want to times this with 100, which means move the decimal point 2 places over to the right. If you go 1 place, you have the number 4. If you go 2 places, you want to add a 0. That becomes a 40. So 0.4 is the same as 40%. And a decimal number that's more than 1 is equivalent to a percentage that's more than 100. Let's go the other way now. How about changing 26% to its equivalent decimal? Like I said, you want to divide this number 26 with 100, which means the decimal point on 26, which is right in the end, 26 means 26.0, right? You can always rewrite any integer number as that integer 0.0 if you want to change it to a decimal number. So 26 is 26.0. Therefore, you move the decimal point 2 places over to the left. That's how you divide with 100. So this becomes 0.26 or 0.26. How about changing 45.91% to its equivalent decimal? I bet you can do it now. Move the decimal point 2 places over to the left. So this becomes 0.4591. As easy as that. Next up, let's talk about how to change a fraction to its equivalent percentage and also the other way, percentage to its equivalent fraction. Let's say you want to start with 3/4 as a fraction and you want to change it to its equivalent percentage. All you need to do is multiply the given fraction with 100. And just apply the rules of fraction multiplication. Rewrite the 100 as 100 over 1 and simplify. 4 times 25 is 100. And then this is 3 times 25 over 1 times 1, which is, I could almost hear you say, 75%. Let's go for another one. Let's say we want to change the fraction 2/3 to its equivalent percentage. Multiply with 100. Rewrite 100 as 100 over 1. Unfortunately, we cannot cancel or reduce this 3 with any of the factors on the numerator. Therefore, all you want to do is Multiply the numerators together. 2 times 100 is 200 and divide that with 3. Now if you divide 200 with 3, you get 66.666 and it carries on, which means it's a recurring decimal. You can round that to any place as you want. Maybe if you want to round it to 2 places after the decimal point, this becomes 66.67. 1 place after the decimal point obviously will give you 66.7 and so on. To change a given percentage to a fraction, let's say we have 35%. You want to change that to a fraction. All you want to do is rewrite this as 35 over 100. A percent means over 100. Always. So 35% means 35 over 100. And then just simplify. Common factor between 35 and 100 is 5. In fact, that's the GCF, greatest common factor. Divide with 5, divide with 5. And we have 7 on the top, 20 on the bottom. So 35% as a fraction is equal to 7/20ths. How about, let's say, 53.28%? How do you do that? Well, the steps are still the same. You want to rewrite this as 53.28 over 100. Now this isn't a common fraction. A common fraction is one in which the numerator and the denominator are both integer numbers. So you want to change this decimal number on the top to an integer. And to do that, you simply multiply this with 100 because you want to move the decimal point 2 places over to the right. And if you do something with the numerator, you got to do the same thing with the denominator. When I say something, I mean multiply or divide. So that becomes 5328 divided by 100 times 100 is 10,000. Time for us to simplify this. And I believe the greatest common factor between 5,328 and 10,000 is 16. So let's just go ahead and divide them with 16. If you couldn't figure that out, you could always start with a smaller number, let's say 4 or even 2, because both are even numbers. You will still end up getting the right answer, the correct fraction in this case. But you'll only have to do a few extra steps in between. The larger the factor you could think of dividing the numerator and the denominator, the less the number of steps in between. And that simplifies to 333 on the top, 625 on the bottom. And this cannot be simplified any further, so this becomes the fraction equivalent of this particular percentage.